The Last Word with Matt Cooper.
Text 53102.
Well, our guest today for our weekly Friday interview is possibly the most prominent atheist in Ireland, the chairman of Atheist Ireland, Michael Nugent. Thank you for joining us here on the programme.
Thanks for inviting me.
And there's loads of other things I want to talk to you about, between your books, your involvement in Aikino, lots of other things. But even before I get to the atheism, one of the things I do want to talk to you about is your partner died. How long ago now is it?
It's nearly 3 years now. Yeah, she unfortunately died of lung cancer. We'd been together 25 years, so it's quite an adjustment coming to terms with that.
And you got married, was it not long before she died?
We did, yeah. We decided we want to give our friends something positive to gather rather than just coming to a funeral. Like her original plan was she told the oncologist that she wanted to have a wake while she was still alive, and she was going to lie in a coffin and have her friends come in and have her hear what they were going to say. So I mean, she was really inspirational the way that she approached it. I mean, she just recognised that was the new reality that she had to face, and she said, look, let's enjoy ourselves as much as we can for as long as we can, and that's what we did.
Had she been told there was no prospect of survival?
She had, yeah. She was told that she had 6 months. It was caught very, very late. And she had to actually drag that out of them, really. They were trying to be diplomatic, and she said, no, look, just tell me what the story is. As it happens, she lived 1.5 years, so we got an extra year. But she was, during that time, she was really inspirational. The only thing that she was concerned about was that she didn't want to undergo unnecessary suffering at the end. And so because of that, we had made preparations for her to be able to take her own life if she needed to, and I was going to help her to do that if she needed to. And now, as it happens, she died naturally, as is the case with most people who make those arrangements, because it's not really about the act of dying, it's about the peace of mind that you have from knowing that you have the option to avoid the suffering. And from the moment that she took that decision and we made those preparations, her quality of life after that was just soared.
How difficult were those discussions that you had, though?
They were very difficult, obviously in an emotional sense, but there were things that we had actually discussed in a hypothetical way before she was diagnosed, because we had talked about these things, I mean, regardless of which of us was going to die first. But yeah, it was difficult, but it was also in a strange way quite pragmatic, because you can't just talk about it in a woolly way. It has to be, how can you make sure that this is peaceful, that it's painless, and that it's reliable? Because the last thing that you want to do is do something that doesn't work, and you end up in an even worse situation.
How quickly did she come to terms with the fact that there was no hope of a cure?
Surprisingly quickly, I thought. And she would talk about it. I remember the day that we got the diagnosis, and we live fairly close to the hospital. We live in Drumcondra, and she was diagnosed in the Mater private hospital. So we were walking home, and we were on the phone just ringing our friends, letting them know. And I was ringing friends, and I was kind of being as diplomatic as I could about it, but Anne was just ringing friends and saying, hi, it's Anne, just ring to let you know that I'm dying. So she was that matter of fact about it. She just said, well, look, this is what it is, and you just have to come to terms with it.
Was she an atheist as well? She
was one of these, in an Irish strange context, she was a Protestant atheist, in that she didn't believe in God, and she didn't go to service or anything like that, but she still considered herself a Protestant, or a member of the Church of Ireland community, in a kind of cultural or ethnic or whatever sense you want to look at. Like she would still have considered that to be the community that she belonged to.
Almost a tribal thing.
Yeah, I think so, and she would have thought so as well. I mean, Anne was the person who really woke me up to the fact that there was a hidden minority in Ireland, which was the Protestants on the Republic side of the border. That when we had partition in Ireland, we effectively had a sectarian Protestant state in Northern Ireland and a sectarian Catholic state in the Republic of Ireland. And while there were enough Catholics to effectively be able to stand up for themselves in Northern Ireland, there were so few Protestants left in the Republic that most of them either emigrated to Scotland or England or Northern Ireland, or else just kept their heads down and just got on with things, but never really were able to fully identify with the state, which was really a Catholic state. I mean, it's one of the things that Paisley was right about, that home rule was Rome rule in the Republic of Ireland.
And I'll get back to more of that in a second with you, but can I ask, what age was Anne when she died?
She was 57.
Okay, and what age were you?
I was 51.
Okay, and how long did it take you to cope with the news? Because you weren't going to die, but you were going to be left behind. How long did it take you to cope for that?
Do you mean after she died?
Well, when she was still alive, knowing that she was going to die.
Well, while she was still alive, we were focusing so much on trying to get as much as we could done in the time that was left. There were things that she wanted to do. She wanted to see people for the last time. She wanted to go places for the last time. We did kind of things that were just absurdly silly. She wanted to have a glass of Bordeaux in Bordeaux, so we did that, which is something you'd never do normally, you know. But we actually, funnily enough, when I most remember her still is from that time is when I'm watching television, because one of the things was, after her chemotherapy sessions, she'd be completely wiped out, and so we just spend literally a day or two just sitting watching box sets of DVDs of old shows or movies that she liked and things like that. And so we spent so long just doing that it's just mundane things like that's kind of stick in your mind.
Cass, do you have children?
We don't. No.
In some respects, did that make things a little bit easier in that you were able to spend time together and give yourselves each other the time without having the responsibilities for looking after children as well?
I'm sure it did, yeah. I mean, it's obviously in some ways it's lonelier afterwards, but I definitely I think it made it easier for us that we only had, like, each of us only had to worry about each other.
And what about the possibility of an afterlife? Did you consider that, both of you, as she was nearing death?
No, never at all. Never even crossed our minds. I mean, there's so much evidence that human beings are animals. You know, we're the same as other animals. Most religious people don't even consider the idea that dogs and cats and cattle are going to go to heaven. Or they just realise that when they die, and we're the same. The idea that a universe of 300 billion galaxies, each of which has 100 billion stars like our sun, was created for the benefit of one species on the planet Earth who would be immortal and who would have a special relationship with the creator of the universe is just frankly delusional.
But a lot of people believe that, and a lot of people believe in the existence of a soul. That is something that only humans have. They
do, yeah, and it's not really so much religion that the problem is. It's faith is the problem. Believing anything disproportionately to the best currently available evidence will cause you problems. It corrupts your sense of reality, and it corrupts your sense of morality. And it's not just in religious terms. Like if you like people kind of, you've been in North Korea. You know, people can have faith in secular projects as well. They can have faith in fascism and communism and in the unregulated free market. There's a range of areas where if people allow themselves to believe things disproportionately to the evidence, it causes problems. The big problem with religion is that these other secular faiths eventually bump into reality and people notice they're not working, but religion hides its testability in an imaginary afterlife.
But do you have faith in atheism?
No, because atheism is proportionate to the evidence. You know, there is no...
But your belief in atheism is unshakable, isn't it?
No, it's not. If I got evidence to suggest there was a God, I would happily say I was mistaken. I mean, I've no inherent desire for there to be no God. You know, it's just where the evidence is leading me. If you look at the evidence of reality, there's so much evidence that humans invented the idea of gods. Every generation we learn more and more about how the universe operates naturally. Every generation we shift more and more explanations from the God did it column to the we now understand how it happens naturally column. There's nothing moving in the other direction. And so in terms of the big questions, which most atheists are quite happy to say we don't know. We don't know what happened before the Big Bang. We don't know how consciousness operates. We don't know how life began on Earth, although we do know through evolution how it continued. There's so much evidence to suggest that when we do discover these answers, that it'll be a natural answer and not a supernatural one. Or maybe we'll never understand it. Maybe it'll take us to evolve into another species to be able to understand it in the same way as cats can't understand algebra.
But what about the possibility, and for many people it is established as far as they're concerned, that people have a soul, which means they are either good or they're bad, that there is a higher power to which they are answerable for their actions on earth?
Well, that's the other area where faith can corrupt our senses, is our sense of morality. Because morality is essentially about how we treat other conscious, sentient beings. It's about whether we minimise suffering, whether we maximise well-being. It's about things like compassion, empathy, reciprocity, cooperation, fairness, justice. And they're difficult things to figure out. It's difficult enough to figure out what the right thing to do in any circumstance is, whether it's, assisted dying, whether it's abortion, whether it's any number of complex moral issues. But when you're trying to figure that out, that process becomes corrupted by people who say, oh, and by the way, you have to make this decision because somebody wrote down in a book 2,000 years ago that the creator of the universe told them that you have to do this, even though you know that it is not minimising suffering. And you'll find that in these sacred texts, people will look at the Bible or the Quran and they'll find morally good passages, to love your neighbour as yourself and to treat the poor fairly and so on, the story of the Good Samaritan. And in the same books, they will read commands to stone a man to death for gathering sticks on the Sabbath, or in the Quran to beat your wife in certain circumstances. And however they justify those other texts to themselves, whether they say, well, that was just for one people at one time, or it's a metaphor or whatever, the fact that they can make a distinction between the bits that are intuitively good and the bits that they have to twist around in order to satisfy themselves shows that they're applying their own morality to it. They're not getting the morality from it.
But can religion provide a good roadmap for people as to where they would live?
No, I think it provides a bad roadmap. Because
if you take the good bits and if you leave out the bad bits, and if you talk about being all the things you mentioned about being respectful to your neighbours, loving to other people, the rest of it, if you follow that and follow a charitable way of life, isn't that a good way of life?
Of course it is, but that's not religion. What religion is...
But is the religion perhaps what inspires that? They wouldn't think of it otherwise, perhaps.
No, well, that's suggesting that without religion, people would just be wandering around murdering and raping and pillaging, which isn't the case. If you look at secular states, the more secular a state is, and the less religious it is, the less you have of murders and serious crimes and teenage pregnancies and all of the things that religion is supposed to protect us from. If you look at even one country where the laws are the same across the United States, it's the Bible Belt states that have the worst of those type of social problems, and it's the liberal states that have the least of them. So there's evidence to suggest that not only is religion not needed for morality, but that religion is actively bad for morality.
Michael Nugent, chairman of Atheist Ireland. Stay with us. I need to take a break and we'll be back after this.
The Last Word with Matt Cooper.
Welcome back. Michael Nugent, the chairman of Atheist Ireland, remains with us. Do you get a hostile reaction from people who do believe in God?
Sometimes, but very rarely. You'll get it on the internet, but then you'll get it on the internet no matter what you're talking about. I think in Ireland most people are increasingly secular. Ireland
and tolerant?
And tolerant. I think Ireland is a more pluralist country than it used to be. Well, look, when we were growing up, contraception was illegal. It's only a few decades since Richard Branson was fined in the Irish courts for selling a condom in the Virgin Megastore. Homosexuality was illegal. Divorce was unconstitutional. We were living through a country where a raped teenage girl had an injunction taken out against her by the state to stop her from leaving the country. So we've moved on significantly as a population.
Because a lot of people would prefer, if we were back in that situation, that we hadn't introduced divorce, contraception, abortion in certain circumstances.
Well, there certainly are people. I wouldn't say a lot. I would say there are less people now than there were. I think the population is becoming increasingly secular, increasingly pluralist. The difficulty is we're still governed by a constitution written in 1937 that starts with "in the name of the Holy Trinity," that imposes a whole lot of religious obligations on office holders, and that says that the state shall pay homage to Almighty God.
Do we have office holders in this country who have effectively lied to take an oath on taking up their position?
Well, by the laws of averages, it seems likely, doesn't it?
Well, if you have senior politicians who are believed to be atheists and then who profess a degree of Christianity because of the requirements of taking up office, what do you make of that?
Well, everybody has to square things with their own conscience, but the most recent public example is Eamon Gilmore. Eamon Gilmore is publicly on record as saying that he doesn't believe in God. Eamon Gilmore, in order to, not just to take up his place on the Council of State, which would have been bad enough, but in order to retain his position as Taoiseach, because being on the Council of State is an obligation as part of the Constitution. In order to be Taoiseach, had to swear an oath before God that he is on record as not believing. Now, that's putting him in a terrible position, however he deals with it. And the European Court of Human Rights has judged on various cases that it is not consistent with human rights to force politicians, or indeed anybody, to declare their religious or non-religious beliefs.
But Michael, what about the belief that some people have that religious institutions in this country, not just Catholic but also Church of Ireland and others, have provided the schooling and the health services that the state has otherwise failed to provide?
Yeah, and that's a failure of the state to allow the religions to do that. They didn't do that out of the good of their heart. They did that because schools are an excellent way of passing on religion.
They might argue that it was out of the good of their hearts.
If you have children before they reach the age of reason, and you have the same person teaching them factual things, like geography and history and so on, and also teaching them what you could at best call subjective beliefs, it's hard for children to distinguish between those two. But that is really changing at the moment. The case this week in the European Court of Human Rights, the Louise O'Keefe case, nominally is about the sexual abuse case that she suffered, which was a horrific case. But it has much wider implications, because the court has effectively said to the state, regardless of the fact that you're allowing the churches to run the school, you, the state, are still responsible for protecting the human rights of children within those schools.
Yeah, because they seem to outsource responsibility, saying it's that of the patron of the school,
exactly,
rather than being of
and
the state.
And they've now been told, no, you can't do that. And that stretches way beyond sexual abuse. That stretches to freedom from discrimination, equality before the law, the religious discrimination on entry, forcing children to produce a baptismal cert, integrating religion throughout the entire curriculum. All of those have been found to be breaches of human rights.
Do you have a difficulty with religion being taught in schools? Because we actually had a discussion about this on Tuesday's programme, and one of the distinctions that came up is about teaching religion is one thing, but faith formation in classes is something else. If the faith formation was left to outside school hours, where it be a voluntary process, would you be happy to have that and allow religion to be taught then in the schools?
Oh yeah, I think it's important to teach about religion. I mean, religion is an important factor of society, and as is atheism. And in fact, Atheist Ireland is working with Educate Together at the moment to design the first primary school classes about atheism for Educate Together schools. The key is that it should be taught in an objective, critical and pluralistic manner, and shouldn't be taught as truth.
We're running out of time, and there are so many other things I could talk to you about, but I want to get away from the religion a little bit. You were one of the writers of I Keano back over a decade ago, about the great Saipan battle between Mick McCarthy and Roy Keane. What do you make of Roy Keane coming back into the Irish management setup?
Well, back into the constantly exploding clown's car of the FAI. I think it provides endless potential for more entertainment. I mean, the FAI once appointed Owen Hand as manager against Paddy Mulligan, because one of the interview board thought that Paddy Mulligan was the person who had thrown a bun at him at one of the away trips. They appointed Jack Charlton by accident when they were trying to appoint Bob Paisley, and then they went off to prepare for a World Cup by going to an island that doesn't have a pitch and forgetting to take footballs.
God moves in mysterious ways, shall we say. Wasn't Owen Hand a better manager than Paddy Mulligan? Wasn't Jack Charlton an inspired choice? And didn't the Saipan affair, bizarrely, prompt the Irish team perhaps to outperform at the 2002 World Cup? Well,
I'm happy that it prompted Aikino. Which Roy Keane came to see and chatted with the cast afterwards, by the way. And there's one really funny story about that one of the cast wanted Keane to sign his autobiography, and so he went back to get it, and he was running back, and he literally ran into Roy Keane. Now, I don't know if you saw the show, but we gave the people kind of Roman names like Macarticus and Quinus and things like that. But the guy was playing Quinn, he ran into Keane and realised what he'd done, and he said, Jesus. And Keane said, Quinus.
I believe your football is your passion in life, isn't it? Outside of, I mean, it's almost like a religion to you.
It is. It's worse than religion, because you can change your religion, but you can't change your football team. So I'm
and your
kind
football
of stuck
teams
with
are
Bohemians and Leeds.
God love you, and particularly what's going on with Leeds today with an Italian takeover. And did you ever consider politics? You did run once for Fine Gael.
I did. I was
elections,
involved briefly in the Progressive Democrats when they started off, first of all. I mean, if you remember back in the 80s, the PDs were the first party to say they wanted to get rid of God from the Constitution. Although admittedly they passed that vote on a Sunday morning when the religious delegates were at Mass. They were also very strong against terrorism, which was something that was very important to me as well. And then I did briefly join join Fine Gael and run as a candidate. But I discovered in party politics, unfortunately, you seem to have to be prepared to spend 90% of your time doing nonsense in order to be able to spend 10% of your time being productive, and that just wasn't good enough.
Can I just finish? I need to go back a little bit to where we started. I mean, how are you coping now without Anne? How many years is it now since she died?
It is nearly 3 years now. And it's hard. It's just such an adjustment. I mean, I've had friends that have helped me go through it, come through it. I mean, for a long while, I was emotionally numbed about it. And obviously, Anne had insisted rather than said. She did want me to move on, which I haven't been able to do for a while. But I think I'm at a stage now where I can start thinking about that again.
If you were a Christian or if you were a religious believer, you might be sort of clinging on to the hope that you would meet her again in an afterlife.
Yeah, if I was a Christian, I'd probably be thinking all sorts of delusionary things about what would happen in an afterlife, but it's not going to happen.
Michael Nugent, Chairman of Atheist Ireland, thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you.